Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Phoenix Project. Today we'll be talking to Sophia Hatzis, who is a personal trainer, coach, mental health advocate, who also runs a podcast called TakeTenForMen, which inspires men about mental health. It's good to have you here. Welcome, Sophia.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor to be with you.
Sweet as. Let's get straight into it. How's your day been going anyway?
Thank you for asking. I, dissimilarly to you guys in Queensland, we are just coming out of lockdown in Sydney. So things are starting to open back up, which is kind of mixed feelings a little bit for me. I've found lockdown to be quite a good opportunity to focus on my podcast and to focus on the things that really matter. So it's a kind of mixed feelings. I'm sort of getting used to everything being open, sort of when you haven't had things open for 4 months and now everything's open back up and everyone wants to go to the pub and to dinner. It's a little bit overwhelming. So I've actually had a really good, really productive day and I'm feeling really excited about talking to you. So plenty to look forward to.
Yeah, sweet. How was that process of being in lockdown from when it started to now?
It's been very different to the first time around because we were all sort of in the same boat when we were all locked down the first time in 2020 because, there was no vaccine and the virus was very new and we were all sort of very scared and in the same boat. So the second time around after seeing Melbourne go through it in late 2020, I don't think we really had a perception of what it would be like Melbourne. And it's been a bit of a roller coaster, to be honest. As I said, I found a lot of benefit from lockdown. Actually, I was able to start TakeTenForMen. I was able to start something I'm really passionate about. And I was very lucky. I was supported by the government, in that time. And I know that it's been a really, really tough time for a lot of people. So I feel very lucky that lockdown was a good thing for me. But yeah, I would say overwhelmingly it was probably for me more positive than it was negative. But I know that that's a very privileged and unique position to be in because, plenty of people with businesses and jobs and families have had a very different experience. So I'm almost a little bit nervous about coming out of lockdown, which is a whole sort of different thing, but definitely very different to the first time around.
Oh, sweet. So was that, did lockdown help you sort of create like TakeTenForMen, like the podcast where you're saying, is that what you're saying? Yeah. How did it all start? How did it all really start?
Yeah, good question. So lockdown actually triggered the podcast. So my podcast is called TakeTenForMen. We are 10-minute conversations with inspiring men about their mental health. And the reason I started the podcast was I was probably the second or third week of lockdown in Sydney. So it would have been early July, very, very early July. And I was scrolling on Instagram and it was sort of when things were a little bit fresh and we weren't really sure how long we were going to be here for and case numbers were rising really high. And I remember coming across this quote on Instagram, which said, "I'd rather have a difficult conversation than make a speech at your funeral." And I've sort of on social media, the few weeks leading up to that, there had been sort of instances of my friends who had opened up about losing friends to suicide. And it became really apparent to me that there was a lot of isolation that was going on, a lot of fear. And that quote really took me back to what it felt like to lose a friend of mine to suicide a couple of years ago. And he was a very special, very, very special man. And we lost a very bright light in the world when he died. And it kind of made me think about we need to be able to have difficult conversations about how we're feeling. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had a resource or these little snackable conversations and snackable podcasts that men could dip in and out of to get a little bit of daily inspiration and to just know that they weren't alone. And that's where the idea came from. And to be honest, I was really nervous about starting it. And the reason I was nervous about starting it is because I'm a woman talking to men about mental health. And that's very unusual. Yeah, it's very unusual. But I really felt like I noticed that there was a kind of a gap or in the market. There was like this thing that didn't exist. And I thought, I can either think the idea or I can actually go out and do it myself. So I chose to do it myself. And originally it was just actually going to be an Instagram series on my personal Instagram, as something sort of to try in lockdown, to try to do something good, because I had a lot of sort of time to think. And it just kind of grew from there. And now we're in our third season, interviewed over 22 people. I've got an audio producer who produces our podcast to make them sound really cool. So it's been a really amazing journey so far, but that's how it started. It really started just by chance, to be honest.
No, awesome. What's been the biggest thing you've learned from since you've started the podcast? Are you there?
The biggest thing I've learned since I've started. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I just cut out for a second. All good. Yeah, continue what you're saying, sorry.
That's okay. We've got a massive storm in Sydney at the moment. I don't know if you can hear the thunder and the lightning, but it's going pretty hectic. The biggest thing I've learned, I don't know if I can really distill all the lessons down into one soundbite, because I learn something new from all of my guests. I learn from everyone, really. And that's the beauty of the podcast, is that these inspiring men don't just inspire other men, they also inspire me. But one of the things that I've learned is everyone's going through something, number one. People often just want to be listened to, number two. And if I were to think about what I've learned maybe about myself starting the podcast, it's that I'm probably more capable than I thought I was. So I learn lessons from all of my guests, which are so profound, including that listening is really, really important, and active listening, not just passively hearing what people say, actively listening and processing that information and retaining that information so that the next time you talk to them, you remember what they said. Active listening is super, super important. But I've definitely learned from starting the podcast that I'm actually probably a lot more capable than I thought I was.
No, sweet. So do you think it's helped you understand mental health more as well, like more mental health space of things? So because that's the thing. Like once you start talking to other people about mental health and stuff, you start to understand a lot of things. Like even like with myself, I've talked to people already and sort of you can relate to stuff with others in some way, even that their story is different, but it sort of connects in a way. So has there what got you into mental health, like talking about mental health?
Good question. Definitely my own experience with mental illness and poor mental health. So it's a long story, and I hope that's okay, and feel free to cut out as much or as little as you like. I did warn you that I like to chat. So I was probably undiagnosed with anxiety since I was quite young. I always had intrusive thoughts about the future. And I remember that starting when I was quite young. So I remember being very fearful of authority. I went to quite a strict primary school. So I was always fearful that I was going to get in trouble or that I was going to get a detention. And then I would sort of overthink everything that I'd done or that I'd said that day. So I think there was probably anxiety present in me from a very early age that went undiagnosed, but it wasn't until 2010 when I was 13 that mental ill health became really apparent. I was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, which is an eating disorder. And I was hospitalized in 2010 in December because I got so emaciated. So I lost so much weight that my organs were starting to shut down. My hair was falling out. My skin was cold. I was having dizzy spells. I was basically starving myself and over exercising. And that had been a period that had gone on for 5 or 6 months until it had gotten to that stage. So that was my first, I suppose, real interaction with anorexia, so an eating disorder, which is a mental health condition, and depression, which resulted from the anorexia, and anxiety as well. So the anorexia almost was a result of the anxiety. So it's how the anxiety was manifesting. And the depression was also a result of the anorexia. So it actually resulted in 2011, when I was 14, I made an attempt on my life, and I was hospitalized for the second time to deal with my mental health because I was very severely depressed. And when you're a teenager and you're going through that kind of severe illness or severe, that it's a really hectic thing to go through when you're that age. That was when I sort of knew that I was probably, that I need to look after myself differently than other kids. I had sort of gone through anorexia and I was still getting treated for anorexia. I had made an attempt on my life. I was in hospital. I was getting on medication. And then I probably didn't realize how much of a journey there was to go. I wasn't probably aware enough of what was going on in my brain and the reasons why I was feeling the way that I was and what was triggering me. So after that, it was probably a good 5 or 6 years before it's sort of in and out of anorexia. So having periods of recovery and then having periods of relapse. So I would have relapsed in and out of anorexia for a good 5 years after that. And then I got to a point when I was at university, in my first year of university. So that would have been 2015, where I just couldn't do it anymore. Like I just couldn't live this sad, lonely, awful life. Like living with an eating disorder is awful. It's the only thing you think about. It's the only thing that matters to you. You push all your friends and your family away. You're angry because you're hungry. Like it's a really unfulfilling way to live. So I just got to the point where I needed help and I wanted help. So I went to specialists and I went to a psychologist and I went to a series of specialists to sort of get me on the right track. And it's been a journey since then, really, just making sure that I look after myself and, knock on wood, I haven't relapsed since that time. So I've been relapse free for 6 years.
Well, sorry you had to go through that, but that's awesome since like that you've fully you've recovered since then. And like, that must have been really hard to go through like that. Like, so sorry, you said that you were severely depressed and you tried to take your own life, did you say earlier?
Yeah.
What was that whole process of like being in hospital and that stage of being severely depressed, if you know what I'm trying to say?
What was it like? It's really surreal. It was I almost felt like I was outside of my body, if that makes sense. Like I felt like the Sophia that I knew was not going through that. It was almost like an out of body kind of experience. And it was a long, long time ago now, and I've still kind of got diary entries that go back to that time. But what I do remember was feeling a lot of regret and shame after it happened. So when I was in hospital, when you're in those kinds of psychiatric wards, they take away a lot of your privileges. So there's nothing in your ward, and there's nothing in your room, and there's nothing near your bed that can be of any harm to you. You're followed to the bathroom. you're followed around, you're watched. Like I was on a watch. I was on suicide watch. So it's a really surreal time. And yeah, I think the overwhelming feeling or sense was regret, was that I had, I'd fucked up. And even at that young age, I didn't maybe have the awareness of how serious it was. Like, it's really fucking serious. And to be honest, like, there was a period there when I was in hospital where it was quite touch and go. Like, they weren't sure whether I was going to make it through the night, because I was still really sick with anorexia at that time. So I was really underweight. So I was obviously medically compromised. And so, yeah, they were really concerned about me sort of making it through the next couple of days. And that period of my life, I can't even imagine how traumatizing that would have been for my parents. And I think now, like, I think back now and I just think, like, how did they go through that and survive that? That just would have been so, so traumatic. So it's very surreal. And, the hospital system does the best that they can in the circumstances, but it's definitely not a position that I ever want to be in again.
Okay. So what was the biggest thing that helped you out of anorexia and depression and all that? What do you think was the biggest thing that helped you get to where you are now?
Oh, that's a really tough question, because I think there are so many factors there. I think there are so many things that can help you or hinder you when you're recovering from any kind of mental health condition. I was really, really fortunate, and I am very fortunate that I have a very, very supportive family. And, my mum and dad and I, we have a very close relationship. And I don't know if I could have gotten through what I did without them. So definitely support, but also, Dylan, just not wanting that to be the rest of my life. Like, I didn't want to live that way. And I think what I realized eventually was that I had a choice. I could either have anorexia forever and live this and survive, not live. Or I could do the hard work and put in some hard work and get better and live a fulfilled life. So, that was probably the thing that got me through most, was the support from my family and friends. I was really fortunate, but also the biggest thing that gets you through is wanting to get better and choosing recovery. Like, I had to choose. Oh, and actually I should mention this as well, because I think this is a really important point. There's a lot of hesitance around medication when people talk about medication. And for me, medication was really important for my recovery. I went to a specialist and I went to psychologists and I went to psychiatrists, and they prescribed me medication to help me get better. And I needed that. Like, at the time, I trusted in the medical professionals to do what they felt was right. And medication definitely helped me in those initial stages. I'm not saying that it's the magic bullet that's going to fix everything, because I don't believe that. I think that you need to, take control of your own life and use other strategies in support of medication to get through mental health conditions if you're going
exactly.
Everyone's
just got to go. Everyone's got their different ways of becoming
of coping.
Reaching their potential and coping with mental health.
For sure. That's something I would say too.
Oh, sweet. So what do you do now? What do you do now for your mental health daily or through the week?
What do I do now? My routine, well, it's interesting because I'm about to go back to work properly after lockdown. But there are a few non-negotiables and a few things that I do every day or every week to make sure that I have positive mental health. One of them is therapy. So I go to therapy once a week, sometimes once a fortnight, depending on how well I'm doing. That is a non-negotiable because, I am a personal trainer. I also have a personal trainer, and I see therapy as something that I just have to lock in as like a workout for the mind, because I never cancel on my PT. Why would I cancel on therapy? So therapy is really important. Exercise is really important. So being a personal trainer, fitness instructor, I'm moving a lot, but I would go completely crazy, I think, if I didn't have exercise. And there is so much research to suggest the power and the importance of exercise in positive mental health. So exercise is really important. What else? Connection. So making sure that I am checking in on my friends, seeing my friends, and being a present friend is quite important to me as well. Making sure that I'm connecting in a meaningful way. And also just cutting myself slack if and when I need to. I've tried now to understand or to get better at realizing that my brain works a little bit differently to other people. And because of what I've been through and because of what the cards that I've been dealt, I can't necessarily live the same life as everybody else. And, I put a lot of pressure on myself as a perfectionist to be a lot of things, but also looking after my mental health means that sometimes I just have to cut myself a little bit of slack and just know that, it's not always going to be possible for me to live this kind of life that everybody else has.
Oh, sweet. So, are you thinking of any other ways of, have you thought of other ways of coping with, what am I trying to say? So, with your mental health, has there been any new things that you've put into your life recently that has helped with mental health, or any other new ideas, if you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like new strategies that I've implemented.
Yeah.
When I can and when I remember and when I'm not slack with it, I've found meditation really helpful. But I have a very, very busy mind. So I find meditation really, really hard. And that's the point, is that meditation is not meant to be easy. It's meant to be something that you practice. And I know that when I've done a little bit of breath work or I've done a little bit of meditation, I do feel a lot better. So that's probably something that's a bit newer that I've tried to implement, is just 5-10 minutes a day of mindfulness. And I'm not perfect. I don't do it all the time. I don't even do it every day. Some days I miss, some weeks I miss, but it's something that I'm trying to get better at, because I know from all the people that I've spoken to on my podcast, most of them meditate. So finding just time and space in your day, it's like 10 minutes is nothing. Like you think about how many hours we spend with our eyes open, like 10 minutes is nothing. You just got to prioritize it. And to be honest, for someone like me, meditation can be a little bit boring, because I'm like, why am I sitting here for 10 minutes? Like my brain just moving at 1,000 miles an hour. But if I were to think about something that is new that I'm trying to implement, I would say meditation, 10 minutes a day.
Yeah. That's one thing I've actually tried to do the past few months, meditating. Exactly what you're saying. They're like I'll try and do it every day, but then there's weeks where, I just won't do it. And because I'm a thinker, I'm always thinking. My mind just doesn't stop. Like even like say when I go to bed, like my mind just doesn't stop whenever, any time of the day. It just keeps thinking of different things. So yeah, meditating, it's slowly a thing that's slowly progressing where I'm starting to actually implement it into my life every day. But then there's times where I'll start stopping for a bit. It's like other things as well, even other things that I try and put into my life. Like let's just say like even just in the morning, I try and also do like stretching and like yoga sort of stuff in the morning, sort of just to get my body ready for the day. But then there's some mornings where I just, I'm just like, no, I can't do this today. But I'm getting better at doing that though. I'm getting better. So it's a good thing that's actually has helped me feel more energized throughout the day. And recently I found out I have sleep apnea. So,
Wow.
So only a few weeks ago. So since I've had that, it has helped me a lot with my sleep. So in the morning, like there is days where I still sort of, it's harder for me to get out of bed, but it has helped a lot. To find out because I would lose breath. I think it said 23 times an hour. So it was pretty serious. Pretty crazy. And I because I would hallucinate throughout the night as well, and go crazy. Like there was times where I would run out of the house and run down the street, not even lying.
What?
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's how crazy it was. So now since I've figured that out, I've rarely ever sleepwalked, hallucinated since that has happened. So it's been a big change because from those events, I would wake up the next morning just feel drained because I'd be running around screaming, literally waking everyone else up. So that's been a big change that has helped me a lot. And I did some research and it said about 20% of men and 10% of women have some sort of sleep apnea. It could be minor. So that's, it is a pretty common thing. So, but so with, do you know any other stories from other people that have sort of impacted your life with mental health that you're able to share?
I think I hear, because of what I do with the podcast, I hear those kinds of mental health stories that are really inspiring all the time. And, you know, being able to see people who really like went to rock bottom and were able to come out of rock bottom is a really amazing thing. And I can't really specifically say one because I think I hear them all the time. Yeah, like every person that I really come into contact with the podcast has their own journey. So, for example, Gus Warland, who is the founder of Gotcha for Life, a mental health organization and charity.
Yes. Yeah, I know him.
Yeah, amazing. He's amazing.
He's great.
His journey started later in life. So he was a radio host and he was killing it on the radio. And, you know, he was offered to do this show on telly, just a series on men's mental health. And he wanted to understand better why one of his friends took his own life. And after he did this show, he just realized that was his purpose. So his whole life then became, you know, how can we end suicide? How can we get men to talk about their feelings? How can we, support each other? So he's got a really amazing story. And then someone like Trent Baldock, who's another person that I interviewed, he's like a chippy and a musician, and he made this viral video, which has now had over 350,000 views. He made this video where he just spoke to the camera in a really sort of raw and emotional state and cried and just said, like, we need to, enough's enough. Like, we can't keep, he had just come off the back of a couple of friends who he lost to suicide. And he was just like, fuck, enough's enough. Like, we just can't keep living like this. And so he's super inspiring to me, because not just of what he did in that video, but everything that he does to support his friends. And then, there's just like so many examples of people who, like even recently I interviewed Hunter Johnson, who's the founder of the Man Cave. And, he works with thousands and thousands of Aussie boys on masculinity and mental health. And he had some like amazing things to say about modern masculinity and positive masculinity, and how we can best support, boys and men in the modern age, and what he does for his mental health. So I think every person who comes onto my podcast, Take 10 for Men, inspires me in some way. So I can't really pinpoint one mental health story, which is actually a real privilege, because I love being able to talk to them about what makes them tick.
Sweet. So is there anything you're going to be adding into the podcast soon, or any other ideas that you have for the podcast?
Oh my God, I have so many ideas, so many things that I want to do. There's a lot of people that I want to interview. So there's a lot of people that I still want to reach out to and talk to. So there's that, but there's also wanting to expand Take 10 for Men into events or talking in schools or programs. So there's a little bit of work sort of going on behind the scenes, and then potentially expanding the podcast into something bigger, but I haven't decided what that is yet. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that I want to do, but it's all sort of in here at the moment. It's not like on paper. I just pointed to my head for everyone who's listening.
Oh, yeah. So do you have an idea of what it's going to be like in, say, a year's time?
Oh, good question. What is it going to look like in a year's time? Hopefully it's going to be, not hopefully, it is going to be more than just a podcast. Because the idea for Take 10 for Men was that it was always meant to be more than just a podcast. So it will be a movement. It will be expanded. There will be more people listening to the podcast. There'll be more people consuming the content. There will be me sort of heading the show, but hopefully more people involved. In a year's time, I want it to be established, and I want it to keep growing, and I want it to be my little baby that just has little baby wings and keeps growing. That's my sort of dream for it.
So what keeps you motivated to do this?
What keeps you motivated to do this? I think I'm motivated because I know that it's making a difference. Like, I think for a long time, and I used to work as a journalist. So I worked in the media, and I've worked in a few places, and I've always done a good job, and I've always committed to that job, but I've never really felt a sense of purpose with what I do right now. And I feel like every podcast episode and every person that listens, hopefully it's making an impact in that person's day, or in that person's life, or in how they perceive themselves, or in how they talk to their boyfriend, or in how they talk to their dad, or in how they talk to their brother. So for me, I'm motivated knowing the impact that it could have on someone else. And honestly, sometimes it can get tough. Like it can feel like you're kind of just not going anywhere and you're going in circles and like, what am I actually doing here? And then other times I'll get a message from someone who said like, hey, Soph, I listened to the podcast. I love it. And it helped me get through XYZ. And like, honestly, those messages mean the world to me because that was the goal. It was always the goal to reach people who needed it. And it's really funny because I cross people sometimes in my personal life who I would never have thought would have listened to the podcast. And they're like, yeah, Soph, like I love your podcast. And I'm like, oh my God, you listen? So that's really motivating as well, is to know that it's like making a difference, even if it's just in a small way. I know that it's making a difference to at least one person's life. So that's what kind of keeps me going.
So, because that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast as well. Just trying to make an impact in some way with someone's life. And that's what I will hope will happen over time. More people sort of connect and then get into it, sort of spread the word. And I hope people listen to this episode because you've shared some great stuff so far within this episode. And I can see Take 10 for Men growing because I've watched a little bits of it, and I want to watch more of your podcast because I think it'll be great for my daily life as well. So do you have any other big goals personally in your life?
I do have big dreams and I do have big goals. I would say that, I've always wanted to be a CEO. So CEO is the goal. CEO. But honestly, Dylan, like my goal recently, and like probably even the last year, like I always had this idea of what I thought success would look like. And I thought that I needed to have the money and the car and the marriage and the kids and like all of these boxes ticked, like house, all this kind of stuff. And I thought that was what success meant. Like I thought that was the goal, was to like have the career and, like tick all of those like social boxes that you were supposed to tick. But what I've realized in the last year in therapy is that was never the goal, and it never is the goal. My goal is actually to be happy and to be content with my life. And so I'm doing a lot of work now in therapy to try to be content with or without those things. So I don't own a house, for example. Some people my age own a house. Some people my age are married. Some people my age have kids. Like I'm almost 25. So if you start like comparing your life to what everyone else's look like, it looks like you're behind. So for me, actually, the goal now is, of course, to like be CEO of my own company, run my own shit. But it's also to just be happy and to just be good, to be the best version of myself and to be the best Soph that I can be, because then I like show up for myself and I show up for my family and I can show up for my friends. And that's what matters, really. At the end of the day, like no one gives a fuck what house you lived in, whether you had a car, whether you traveled the world, whether you had a fancy job. People care about whether you were nice to them and good to them. And like I think about all the people who've made an impact on my life and who I love, and I could not give a fuck how much money they earn, what their job is. The only thing that sits with me and lasts.
Hey, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me? Did you just drop out?
Yeah, it dropped out for like a good 5 to 10 seconds.
I'm back. Did you get that?
Yeah. Oh, you're saying. Oh, we got to where you're saying. Oh, you're saying it doesn't matter what someone's job is,
Yeah.
and stuff like. Yeah, I got to that bit, and then you're saying others. You're saying other stuff, but it sort of dropped out when you were up to that bit.
Do you want me to repeat it?
Oh yeah, if that's okay, yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
please.
of course. Of course. So I guess for me, if I think about the people that have made an impact on my life and have a place in my heart, it doesn't matter what job they have, whether they have a house, whether they have a car, whether they have money in their account, whether they have Prada bags or Fendi shit or new shoes. Like, I just don't care. What I care about and what I think about when I think about the people that I love is whether or not they treated me well and whether or not they're good people and nice people. So at the end of the day, that's honestly what matters. Like, you can have all the money in the world and still be an asshole.
Yeah, exactly. Who has been your biggest mentor, um, influencer? Would you say?
Oh my God. Do you know what? I'm actually really lucky that I've had quite a few. And I think that I draw probably inspiration from like different people for different reasons. One of them that stands out to me is my friend Jerome Dorasami. And Jerome, I have interviewed for the podcast, but he is a mentor from way back. So he's been probably my mentor and friend for like a good 5 years. And he is an author, he was a lawyer, he's a presenter, he's an editor now. But he went through a period of like very, very severe depression and anxiety and has sort of come out the other side. And he is just the most phenomenal person. Like, he really kind of embodies what I want to be and who I want to become, in the sense that he's loyal, he's kind, he's hardworking, and he does a lot of work on himself, and he doesn't shy away from talking about difficult things. So there's a lot of things that I really admire about Jerome, and I would definitely say he's like a mentor, brotherly figure to me, who has really inspired and motivated me to be the best version of myself. And he's always showed up for me. Like, he has always, it's never too hard. There's nothing that's too hard. He's just kind of always showed up. Another sort of influence on me was one of my old educators in my Cert 3 and 4. So he was kind of a mentor. He's a friend of mine. His name's Carl Goodman. He runs a facility called Athletes Authority in Sydney, which is kind of like an athlete's gym performance facility.
Yep.
And his drive, hustle, motivation, attitude, charisma is so inspiring. So I find him really inspiring and really motivating as a mentor. And he's always backed me. He's always supported me. He's always tried to help me where he can. And, my parents, in a way, we fight like cats and dogs sometimes, but, I look to them as sort of pillars of strength. And, my mum and dad both have qualities that I don't like, and they both have qualities that I do like. And I try to draw from their positive qualities. So my dad is super motivated, super creative, very active. And my mom is like one of the most generous people you'll ever meet. She's like this little angel. So I try to draw from those two things. And I think I try to take the best from both of them. But yeah, there's definitely been a few mentors and I think also, like, to anybody out there who doesn't have a mentor and wants a mentor, ask, like, tell someone who you really admire that you would really love to be closer to them and be mentored by them. And, I'm sure that would be like a very humbling experience. If someone asked me to mentor them, I'd be like, oh my God, sure. I'd love that. So yeah, I think don't be afraid to ask, because people are often the worst thing they can say is no, really.
That's it. That's with really anything. Even
Yeah.
not just that, even just if you want to go get a job, even if, yeah, just really anything out there. All it is no, go, yeah, go out and just
Yeah.
go find another place to go, another, don't just feel down on yourself because one person said no to you. That's all it is. It's just another way to keep you firing on and firing on for more,
Mm.
really. But yeah, that's
Mhm.
really all the questions I had for you. I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything you'd like to share before we end the podcast?
Or do you mind if I steal some of your listeners?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Come and listen to Take 10 for Men. Just look up Take 10 for Men in your favorite podcast app. You can check out our website where we've got all of our episodes and all of our guests. So www.take10formen.com. And yeah, come check us out. Check us out on Instagram. We're also on TikTok. So just come along for the ride. And I also really appreciate and respect what you're doing, Dylan. I think it's really cool. And the more people in this space, the better. So keep doing what you're doing. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing what you shared. It was really great to listen to what you had to say. But yeah, guys, don't forget to go check out Take 10 for Men. It's good way especially for men to really focus on people's stories on their mental health and sharing ways to really cope and get better with whatever you're dealing with. But yeah, thanks again for hopping on. It was a great episode. I really appreciate it again. And yeah, we're gonna have to do this sometime in the future for sure. Again, I really yeah, it was great.
Yes. When I'm in Queensland, I'll come say hi if they ever open the borders.
Yeah,
Who
for
knows?
sure. Because yeah, soon enough I want to try and try and do it face to face with people. And yeah, it'll be great once we have these borders open. But yeah, anyway, you have a good one and yeah,
Thank you.
have a good rest of your day. Okay.
Thanks, legend. Have a great day. And
Okay.
thanks for having me.
Okay. See ya.